The studio was alive with excitement long before the cameras began rolling. Viewers had packed the audience, eager to witness a rare television event. Two internationally recognized women would be sharing the stage together. Country music legend Dolly Parton, whose remarkable career had spanned more than 6 decades, and Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, who was appearing to discuss her newest lifestyle project. Producers expected an engaging conversation filled with inspiration, humor, and mutual admiration. As the show opened, the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. Dolly entered first, greeting nearly everyone she met with hugs, smiles, and genuine kindness. Within moments, she had the production crew laughing, making the studio feel relaxed and familiar. Her natural charm seemed effortless, the result of a lifetime spent connecting with people from every walk of life. A short time later, Meghan joined the panel. She was polished, composed, and ready to introduce her latest venture. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed both guests enthusiastically, calling it a special occasion to have two influential women appearing together. The audience responded with loud applause as the conversation officially began. Whoopi first turned to Dolly, asking about her latest projects. Dolly's eyes immediately brightened. "Oh, honey," she laughed, "I never really slow down." She proudly shared that her famous children's literacy initiative had now distributed more than 200 million books to young readers. The audience erupted into applause at the incredible milestone. "What keeps me going," Dolly explained, "is knowing children everywhere are opening books they might never have had otherwise." The discussion then shifted to Meghan, who described her new lifestyle brand. She explained that it focused on creating products designed to make everyday life feel more meaningful through carefully selected home items and specialty foods. Joy Behar leaned forward with curiosity. "What kinds of products are we talking about?" Meghan described handcrafted jams, home decor, and carefully chosen household goods that reflected thoughtful, value-driven living. Dolly listened attentively before asking with genuine curiosity, "Now, sweetheart, what exactly do you mean by value-driven?" Meghan replied that consumers should choose products reflecting their personal beliefs and principles. Dolly chuckled softly. "Well," she smiled, "I usually just buy what I enjoy. I don't spend much time wondering if my jam shares my opinions." The audience laughed warmly, though Meghan's smile appeared noticeably tighter. Sunny Hostin steered the discussion back toward Dolly's literacy program. 200 million books is incredible! How did it all begin?" Dolly became noticeably more reflective. "My daddy couldn't read," she said quietly. "He was one of the smartest people I ever knew, but reading was something he never had the chance to learn. That always stayed with me." She explained how the project had started in her hometown before expanding across the United States and eventually reaching families around the world. "I simply wanted every child to have the opportunity my father never did." The audience listened in complete silence before applauding once again. Sarah Haynes added that the books arrived every month at no cost to participating families, supported entirely through donations. "It's simple," Dolly explained. "Parents register and children receive books until they're 5 years old. Nothing complicated, just books arriving at the front door." After a brief pause, Meghan offered another perspective. "I think it's also important," she said carefully, "to teach children mindful consumption instead of simply giving them more things." A noticeable silence settled over the studio. Dolly turned toward her with the same calm expression she had worn throughout the interview. "Sweetheart," she replied gently, "when a little child receives their very first book, one addressed to them by name, that isn't about consuming things." She paused briefly before continuing. "That's about opening a door to possibilities." Meghan quickly clarified that she hadn't meant to criticize the program. "I understand," Dolly answered kindly, "but some children don't have books at all. Before we can teach thoughtful choices, we have to make sure they actually have choices." The audience broke into applause, clearly moved by Dolly's heartfelt response. Meghan appeared uncomfortable as the tension became impossible to ignore. Sensing the atmosphere changing, Joy quickly stepped in, attempting to guide the conversation toward a lighter subject before the exchange became even more awkward. The conversation had already grown noticeably tense, but the hosts made another attempt to steer things back toward lighter territory. Meghan, one of the panelists, began. Tell us about the wellness retreat you recently hosted in Australia. Meghan smiled and described it as an inspiring gathering where women came together to reflect, build connections, and support one another through shared experiences. She spoke passionately about creating spaces that encouraged personal growth and intentional living. Anna Navarro nodded before casually mentioning the reported ticket price. About $3,000, right? That's beyond the reach of most people. Meghan explained that the event was designed as a premium experience, offering expert speakers, workshops, and carefully planned activities. Before the discussion could move on, Dolly offered a gentle observation. Well, honey, she said with her familiar smile, I've always believed that when you're trying to help people, it's nice if as many folks as possible can walk through the front door. The audience responded with light laughter. Meghan politely answered that meaningful programs required funding and that sustainable businesses allowed important work to continue over the long term. Dolly nodded. And that's true, she replied. Nothing wrong with building something that lasts. She paused before adding with characteristic humility, when I put on concerts in communities that don't have much, I always try to keep tickets affordable. Sometimes the people who need encouragement the most are the ones who can least afford it. The room grew quiet. Meghan turned directly toward Dolly. Not everyone has the ability to give away hundreds of millions of books, she said. Some of us have to create business models that support our work. Dolly smiled warmly. Oh, sweetheart, I'm not paying for all those books myself. She explained that years earlier, she had created businesses that generated funding for charitable programs. Donations, partnerships, and the success of her entertainment ventures helped finance her literacy initiative. That's sustainability too, Dolly said. The difference is that the children never receive a bill. Several audience members applauded. Whoopi Goldberg quickly stepped in. I think you simply have two different philosophies about giving back. Meghan, however, seemed unconvinced. It feels like there's an implication that work connected to business is somehow less meaningful. Dolly immediately shook her head. I'm not judging anybody, darling, she answered softly. I'm only sharing what's worked for me. Recognizing the tension, Sunny Hostin redirected the discussion. Dolly, you've spent more than 60 years in the public eye. How have you handled criticism for so long? Dolly laughed. Oh, I've heard every criticism imaginable. My music, my clothes, my hair, my voice. The audience laughed with her. But I learned a long time ago that critics don't get to decide my happiness. I stay focused on the people I'm trying to help. Sarah Haynes then turned to Meghan. You've also faced enormous public scrutiny. How do you deal with it? Meghan reflected that much of the criticism directed toward her stemmed from prejudice and misunderstanding rather than her actual work. It often isn't really about me, she explained. It's about what people project onto me. Dolly nodded thoughtfully. I understand some of that, she said. Being a woman in country music decades ago wasn't always easy either. I figured the best answer was to keep working until the work spoke louder than the criticism. Meghan responded carefully. Our experiences have been very different. Dolly agreed. They surely have. She briefly shared one of the more frightening moments of her career, recalling a period when security concerns forced her to perform under extraordinary protection after receiving serious threats. The audience fell silent. I'm not comparing hardships, Meghan clarified. I'm only saying our situations aren't the same. They never are, Dolly replied kindly. Everybody carries different burdens. I just try to meet mine with a little grace and a little kindness. The hosts exchanged quick glances as the atmosphere remained delicate. Joy Behar shifted the conversation again. You've always avoided taking strong political sides, Dolly. That's unusual these days. Dolly smiled. I've got fans from every background you can imagine, she answered. My job isn't telling people how to vote. My job is singing songs, helping children read, and trying to leave the world a little better than I found it." Meghan respectfully suggested that public figures also had a responsibility to use their platforms to advocate for broader social issues. Dolly nodded without hesitation. "I believe in standing up for causes," she said. "Education, disaster relief, helping families in need, those things matter deeply to me." She paused before adding, "I've found it's easier to bring people together when you focus on helping first, instead of dividing them." The audience applauded once more as Whoopi stepped in, gently guiding the conversation toward the next topic before the discussion became any more uncomfortable. The conversation had reached a point where every response carried extra weight. Although the hosts repeatedly tried to steer the discussion toward lighter subjects, neither guest seemed ready to move on. Dolly maintained her calm smile as she continued explaining her philosophy. "My way has always been pretty simple," she said. "I like solving problems quietly. I don't need a spotlight on every good deed." Meghan nodded politely before responding. "I believe I solve problems too. Some challenges simply require a different approach." Dolly agreed without hesitation. "I'm sure they do." She paused for a moment before asking a question that immediately caught everyone's attention. "I'm genuinely curious. What specific results has your foundation achieved?" The studio suddenly fell silent. Meghan hesitated briefly before answering. "Our work focuses on larger issues like mental health awareness, building stronger communities, and encouraging long-term social change. Those kinds of outcomes aren't always easy to measure." Dolly nodded thoughtfully. "Well, mine are pretty easy to count," she replied with a gentle laugh. "Books delivered, children enrolled, communities served. I've always liked numbers because they tell a straightforward story." Meghan answered that not every meaningful accomplishment could be reduced to statistics. "I completely agree," Dolly said. "But when generous people donate money to help children, they deserve to know exactly where it went. Accountability isn't something to be afraid of." The audience applauded once again. Sensing the conversation becoming increasingly uncomfortable, Joy Behar smiled awkwardly. "Maybe we should switch to something a little lighter." Before anyone else could respond, Meghan spoke. "I'd actually like to finish this discussion." She explained that she felt her work was being viewed as somehow less valuable simply because it operated differently. Dolly immediately shook her head. "Honey, I haven't judged your work. I've only described mine. If people naturally compare them, that isn't something I created." Then came a remark that changed the mood entirely. "You've had an easier career than I have," Meghan said. "People have adored you for decades. You haven't experienced the kind of public attacks I've endured." The studio became completely silent. Even the audience stopped reacting. For the first time, Dolly's expression changed. She remained kind, but there was unmistakable firmness in her voice. "Easy?" she repeated quietly. She spoke about growing up in a tiny mountain cabin with 11 siblings, in a home without electricity or running water. She remembered wearing handmade clothes and being teased as a child. Throughout her career, she said, she had been dismissed, mocked for her appearance, underestimated because of her image, and criticized countless times. "But I made a choice," Dolly explained. "I decided those opinions wouldn't define who I was." Meghan appeared momentarily taken aback. "I didn't mean your life was literally easy," she clarified. "I meant the way people have viewed your career." Dolly smiled gently. "My career hasn't been easy," she answered. "It's been long." She explained that she had worked continuously since her teenage years, writing thousands of songs, performing around the world, and building businesses from the ground up. "That isn't luck," she said. "That's endurance." The audience applauded. Dolly continued with a touch of humor. "Most people still think I'm just a woman with big hair and flashy clothes." Laughter spread through the audience. "So I joke about myself before anyone else can. When you laugh with people instead of fighting them, they lose the power to hurt you." Several audience members applauded again. Meghan responded quietly. I don't think you understand everything I've been through. Dolly nodded. You're probably right. She spoke without anger. And you don't fully understand what I've been through either. That's perfectly okay. We've lived different lives. Sarah Haynes quickly attempted to calm the discussion. I think everyone here ultimately wants the same thing. Meghan turned toward the hosts. Right now it feels like I'm being outnumbered. Joy quickly reassured her. No one's against you. We're simply having an honest conversation. Meghan observed that nearly everything Dolly said received applause, while her own comments were met with skepticism. Dolly spread her hands. I can't control how people react. I can only answer honestly. She then explained why she believed the audience responded differently. When I talk about books delivered, families helped, or children reading, people can picture those things. They're tangible. She smiled kindly before continuing. When conversations stay very broad, people sometimes struggle to understand exactly what success looks like. That's just human nature. Meghan replied that she refused to reduce complex work into simple talking points. That's completely fair, Dolly answered. But if people can't see the results, they'll naturally have questions. She paused one final time. My books are sitting on shelves in homes around the world. What's the visible outcome people can point to from your foundation? The room fell silent once again. Without another word, Meghan suddenly rose from her chair. The unexpected movement startled both the panel and the audience. I don't have to justify myself, she said firmly. Dolly remained seated, calm and composed. You certainly don't, she replied softly, but we're here today to talk about the work we each believe in. The atmosphere in the studio had become unmistakably tense. Every word now seemed to carry more weight than anyone had expected when the interview began. Dolly remained calm as she looked toward Meghan. That's what we've been doing, she said gently. We've been talking about our work. If the conversation hasn't gone the way you hoped, I don't think that's because anyone here wanted to be unkind. Meghan shook her head. This discussion has felt hostile from the moment I sat down. Dolly glanced at the hosts, then toward the audience before returning her attention to Meghan. Has it? She asked softly. I've tried to be as friendly as I know how. I've answered every question honestly and shared my own experiences. If that feels hostile, maybe it's worth asking why. Without replying, Meghan reached for her purse beside the couch. I'm not staying somewhere. I don't feel respected. Whoopi Goldberg immediately stepped in, her voice calm and measured. You have been treated respectfully, she said. Disagreement and disrespect aren't the same thing. It doesn't feel that way, Meghan replied. Dolly answered quietly. Honey, I've been doing this for a very long time. One thing I've learned is that feeling disrespected and actually being disrespected are often two different things. Sometimes being asked difficult questions feels uncomfortable, but that doesn't automatically make the questions unfair. The studio fell silent. Meghan walked toward the edge of the stage. This was a mistake. Sunny Hostin asked carefully, Coming on the show? Meghan paused before answering. Coming on with her. A ripple of surprise spread through the audience. Dolly's smile faded just slightly, though her voice remained composed. I'm sorry you feel that way, she said. I was honestly looking forward to meeting you. I thought we might enjoy getting to know one another. Friends don't undermine each other on national television, Meghan answered. I haven't tried to undermine you, Dolly replied. I've simply talked about my own work. The comparisons weren't mine. I've only explained what I do and why it matters to me. Standing near the exit, Meghan looked back one final time. Not everyone gets to be America's sweetheart. Some of us have had to fight for everything. Dolly nodded thoughtfully. I fought for everything too, she said. I just chose to do it with a smile. Sometimes kindness carries you farther than anger ever can. With that, Meghan left the studio. The door closed behind her, leaving an uncomfortable silence that lingered for several moments. Finally, Whoopi broke it. Well, that certainly wasn't what anyone expected. Dolly looked genuinely saddened. "I truly didn't mean to upset her," she said. "I was only trying to answer the questions." Joy Behar reached over reassuringly. "You didn't do anything wrong. You were simply yourself." Dolly sighed. "I just wish things had gone differently." Sunny leaned forward. "You were gracious from beginning to end. She questioned your approach, you explained it, and you stayed respectful throughout." Dolly nodded slowly. "She's clearly carrying something heavy," she said. "People usually don't become that defensive unless they're hurting somehow." The audience applauded quietly, touched by her compassion even after such an uncomfortable exchange. Ana Navarro smiled. "That's what makes you different. Most people would still be angry." Dolly shook her head. "I've learned that anger usually comes from fear. Whatever she's struggling with, I hope she finds peace." Whoopi turned toward the cameras. "We're going to take a short break. When we return, we'll continue our conversation with the one and only Dolly Parton." During the commercial break, the hosts gathered around Dolly, checking on her privately. "The grace you showed out there was remarkable," Sarah Haynes said. Dolly smiled modestly. "It isn't really grace," she answered. "It's practice. After 60 years, you learn you've always got two choices when someone comes at you. You can argue back, or you can rise above it. I've found the second choice lasts longer." When the show returned from break, Whoopi addressed viewers directly. "Before we continue, we want to acknowledge what happened in the previous segment. One of our guests chose to leave early. That's unusual for our program, and we want to recognize that Dolly Parton conducted herself with professionalism and kindness throughout the discussion." Dolly waved the compliment away. "Oh, let's not dwell on it," she said. "I'm sure she has her reasons. I sincerely hope she's doing well." Joy smiled. "That's incredibly generous." Dolly laughed softly. "What good does carrying a grudge do? Life's too short for that. I've got songs to write, children to encourage, and plenty of work still ahead." The audience responded with a standing ovation.